The transport shuttle shook violently as it pierced through Draker Prime's thick red atmosphere. Dr. Tamin Park gripped the edge of his seat, watching the ancient world come into view below. Mountains twisted like giant fingers reaching toward the sky, carved by winds that had howled for millions of years. Between the peaks, massive stone structures emerged from the crimson clouds, ruins so old that nobody in the galaxy knew who built them. "I still don't understand why they sent us here," Lieutenant Hannah Choi said from the pilot's seat. Her hands moved quickly across the glowing controls, keeping the shuttle steady through the rough winds. "This planet has been dead for ages. The Council barely gave us any equipment. Just 3 humans poking around in the dark." 4, corrected Jaiwan Kim without looking up from her datapad. The engineer was already scanning the structures below, her eyes wide with fascination. "Miho is still up in orbit, remember? He's monitoring everything from the ship." Tamin smiled slightly. Jaiwan never forgot anyone on the team, no matter how far away they were. It made her excellent at her job. She treated every bolt and wire in a ship like it was part of the family. The shuttle touched down on a flat plateau that looked like it had been cut by intelligent hands rather than nature. Dust swirled around them as the engines powered down. Through the viewport, Tamin could see the mountain temple rising before them like a sleeping giant. Bridges that seemed to float in the air connected towers that twisted impossibly upward. At the center of it all was a massive entrance, framed by pillars covered in symbols that hurt to look at for too long. "These readings are impossible," Jaiwan muttered, frowning at her scanner. "The entire mountain isn't just carved from rock, it is rock but changed somehow. Like someone turned normal stone into crystal at the molecular level. We don't have technology that can do this." "Maybe we used to," Tamin said quietly as he stepped off the shuttle onto the alien soil. The ground felt solid beneath his boots, but there was something else. A faint vibration like the planet itself was breathing very, very slowly. Hannah checked her weapon and followed him out. Or maybe whoever built this was way ahead of us and died out. Happens all the time in the galaxy. They spent the first few days exploring the outer chambers of the temple. The halls were enormous, clearly built for beings much larger than humans. Every wall was covered in murals showing strange creatures and events from a time before recorded history. Some of the aliens in the paintings looked familiar, species that still existed in the galaxy today. Others were completely unknown, perhaps extinct for millions of years. But it was the dragons that appeared everywhere that captured Tamin's attention. Dragons flying through space. Dragons fighting against the spreading darkness. Dragons standing side by side with humanoid figures that looked remarkably like humans. In every single mural, the dragons were shown as protectors and warriors, defending the light against something terrible and vast. "You're obsessed with those paintings," Hannah said one evening as they set up camp in what looked like an ancient meditation room. Small glowing crystals in the walls provided gentle light. "They're just religious art or mythology from a dead civilization." "Maybe," Tamin replied, running his fingers across a symbol on the wall. It matched something in his personal notebook, a small journal his grandmother had given him before she died. She had filled it with old stories, legends from Korea and other human cultures about dragons. But what if they're memories instead? Hannah didn't answer. She didn't believe in his grandmother's stories. Few people did. Dragons were myths, nothing more. Everyone knew that. On the 8th day of exploration, everything changed. They found a passage that led deeper into the mountain, sloping downward into darkness. Their lights barely cut through the shadows as they descended, walking for what felt like hours. The air grew colder with each step, and the vibration Tamin had felt on the surface grew stronger. Then the passage opened up. The chamber beyond was so massive that their lights couldn't reach the ceiling or the far walls. It felt like standing inside a hollow moon. And in the center, rising from the stone floor like a second mountain, was the dragon. It was perfect. Every scale was individually carved, each one as large as their shuttle. The wings were folded against its body, creating ridges and valleys like a miniature mountain range. Its head was noble and fierce, with curved horns and eyes closed as if in deep sleep. The eyes themselves were as large as buildings. The dragon's tail coiled around the base in protective circles, and its massive claws gripped a sphere of crystal that pulsed with faint inner light. "This can't be real," Jaiwan whispered, her voice echoing in the vast space. She held up her scanner, which was flashing with readings that made no sense. "It's giving off energy signatures. Not like a statue, like something alive but sleeping." Hannah took several steps backward, her hand moving to her weapon out of instinct. "We need to report this to the council. This is way beyond what we're trained for." But Tamin was already moving forward, pulled by something he couldn't name or explain. Around the base of the dragon ran a circular platform carved with symbols. He recognized them immediately. They matched the symbols in his grandmother's notebook. They were written in a language that existed before Korean, before Chinese, before any human language that scholars knew about. Yet somehow, looking at them, he could almost understand what they said. "Taemin, stop." Hannah called out, but he didn't listen. He reached the platform and knelt down, his fingers tracing the ancient script. The symbols began to glow softly under his touch, responding to his body heat, or maybe to something deeper, something in his blood. "It's a guardian," he said softly, his voice filled with wonder. "A protector that was placed here to watch over something important. These words, they're an invocation. A way to call the guardian when the world needs it." "Needs it for what?" Jaiwan asked, approaching slowly with her scanner still running. Taemin looked up at the enormous dragon, at its peaceful sleeping face. In his mind, he heard his grandmother's voice from long ago, telling him bedtime stories about dragons who slept beneath mountains and would wake when darkness returned to threaten the world. "To fight the darkness," he whispered. For 3 days the team studied the dragon and measured everything they could. Miho, monitoring from orbit, reported strange energy fluctuations coming from deep inside the mountain. Something was changing. The planet that had been dead and silent for millions of years was beginning to stir. On the third night, Taemin couldn't sleep. He left Hannah and Jaiwan at their camp and returned to the chamber alone, carrying only a small light and his grandmother's notebook. The pages were old and fragile, preserved carefully across light years and decades of travel. He stood before the sleeping dragon and opened the notebook to a page he had memorized as a child. The words written there were simple, just 2 syllables in ancient Korean. His grandmother had made him practice them over and over, saying they were important, that one day he might need them. "This is crazy," he told himself quietly. "It's just superstition. Old stories that don't mean anything." But humanity had carried its myths and legends across the stars when they left Earth. Every human culture, no matter where they came from, had stories about dragons. That had to mean something. It couldn't all be coincidence. Taemin took a deep breath and placed his hand on the glowing platform. He spoke the 2 words his grandmother had taught him, the words she said must never be forgotten. "Wake up." For a single heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the entire mountain began to shake. The platform blazed with brilliant light. Symbols raced around the dragon's base in spinning circles, faster and faster. The dragon's scales began to shimmer and shift, changing from dull stone gray to deep red and gleaming gold. Waves of energy pulsed through the chamber, so powerful that Taemin could feel them in his chest, in his bones, in his very soul. "Taemin." Hannah's voice echoed from the tunnel entrance. "What did you do? The whole mountain is shaking. The readings are going insane." He couldn't answer. Couldn't move. Couldn't look away. The dragon's eyes were opening. They burned like newborn stars, blazing with white gold light that drove back every shadow in the chamber. The massive head lifted slowly, the neck extending with a sound like continents grinding together. Wings unfurled with a crack like thunder, each one large enough to cover a city. The crystal sphere in its claws began to pulse with the same light as its eyes. And then it spoke, not with sound but directly into Taemin's mind. The voice was vast and ancient and carried a hint of amusement, like a grandfather waking to find his grandchild poking him. The emergency meeting of the Galactic Council happened fast. Within hours of the dragon waking up, Taemin found himself standing in the center of a massive circular chamber. Hundreds of alien beings surrounded him on all sides, sitting in seats that rose up like a stadium. Their bodies came in every shape imaginable. Some had scales, others had fur or skin that glowed. Some had 2 eyes, others had 6 or 10. They created a rainbow of colors and forms that made Taemin feel very small and very human. Ambassador Kyung Lee stood next to him. She was Earth's representative to the council, a woman who had spent years learning how to navigate alien politics. Her face showed nothing, perfectly calm and neutral, but Taemin could see tension in the way she held her shoulders. During their rushed shuttle ride to the council station, he had told her everything. Even she looked worried. "This human claims he awakened an ancient weapon," declared High Counselor Thex, a tall creature covered in silver scales. His voice was cold and calculated. "A creature of immense power now flies freely through our space. This is an act of war against the council." "It's not a weapon," Taemin said firmly, trying to keep his voice steady. "Varthax is a guardian. He protected the galaxy millions of years before your civilizations even existed." Angry whispers rippled through the chamber like wind through grass. The aliens muttered to each other in dozens of different languages. Counselor Morvik, a Thros with 6 eyes and mechanical implants covering half his body, leaned forward in his seat. Impossible. Our historical records go back 12 million years. There is no mention of dragons or these first wardens you speak of. Because they made you forget, said a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Every screen in the chamber flickered and came alive with the same image. Varthax sat perched on top of a mountain on Draker Prime, his massive form silhouetted against 2 setting suns. His scales glittered like precious gems, and his wings were spread wide enough to cast shadows across valleys. The council chamber erupted in chaos. Security guards rushed forward with weapons raised, though what they thought they could shoot at an image on a screen was unclear. Some aliens shouted in fear, others in anger. Ambassador Kyung raised her hand for silence. It took several minutes for the noise to die down. If this void swarm is real, she said carefully, why haven't we detected it? Why don't our sensors show anything? Varthax's mental voice filled the chamber, speaking directly into every mind present. It was a strange sensation, not sound but thoughts that weren't your own. The void swarm exists partially outside your dimension. It lives in the spaces between realities, but the seals that hold it back are failing. Already, 3 colony worlds on the rim have gone silent. Your scouts will find them empty. Not destroyed, just hollow. Every living thing consumed, leaving only empty buildings behind. High Counselor Thex's scales rippled with agitation. This is a human trick. They're trying to create fear so they can gain power in the council. Tamin's communicator buzzed. It was Miho still in orbit around Draker Prime. He activated the holographic display built into his wrist device. A map of the outer rim appeared in the air, showing 3 red markers. These are the colonies Varthax mentioned. Miho's voice was tight with tension. I just intercepted distress calls from all 3. The transmissions cut off mid-sentence. Council ships arrived at the first colony 20 minutes ago. The chamber fell completely silent. Everyone waited. 5 long minutes passed, each one feeling like an hour. Then a transmission came through from the council scout ship. The captain appeared on the screens, his gray face completely drained of color. His hands were shaking. High Counselor, the colony is intact. Every building is standing. All the systems are still running. Power, life support, everything. But there's nobody here. 20,000 colonists, they're just gone. No bodies. No signs of fighting or panic. Just emptiness. Varthax's voice cut through the shocked silence. The void swarm has begun feeding. And your fleets cannot stop it. Your weapons cannot harm creatures that live partially outside your reality. Only the first wardens and their human partners have ever defeated this enemy. Partners? Ambassador Kyung asked sharply, her neutral expression finally cracking. What do you mean by partners? The dragon's eyes seemed to look directly at her through the screen. Why do you think humans are so different from other galactic species? So aggressive when threatened? So adaptable to new situations? So willing to fight even when the odds seem impossible? Your ancestors were warriors. They were shaped and trained across many generations to stand beside us in battle. You are the Whispers, humans who can wake sleeping guardians and help channel our power. High Counselor Thex slammed a clawed appendage on his console. I refuse to believe this. Humans have been in space for barely 200 years. They're newcomers. Primitives. There's nothing special about them. Varthax's mental laugh was like distant thunder. Then test me. Send your fleets to attack. Try to stop one dragon. Then imagine facing the void swarm, which destroyed civilizations far more advanced than yours. That sounds like a threat, Counselor Morvik said coldly. It's a demonstration, Varthax replied. You need to understand what you're facing. Before anyone could respond, alarms started blaring throughout the station. The screens split to show a massive battle fleet dropping out of hyperspace near Draker Prime. There were at least 50 warships, some of them larger than cities. Admiral Tarek's scarred face appeared. He was a Quellan, a species known for their military prowess. By order of the Security Council, the entity called Varthax must be contained or destroyed immediately. All humans in the area are to surrender for questioning. Tamin felt his stomach drop. This was exactly what Varthax had warned might happen, that fear would make the council act stupidly. On the main screen, the dragon's eyes blazed brighter. Very well. I will show you what you face. But know this, I will not harm your people even in demonstration. That is not the way of guardians. What happened next would be studied by military academies for generations to come. Varthax didn't attack. He simply flew toward the fleet, his massive body accelerating to speeds that should have been impossible for something so large. The battleships opened fire immediately, unleashing enough destructive power to destroy a planet. Energy beams, missiles, and kinetic projectiles all converged on the dragon. Every single attack passed harmlessly through him. Varthax had somehow shifted his body slightly out of normal space. The weapons hit nothing but empty vacuum. Then he was among the ships, weaving between them with impossible grace for something the size of a mountain. He touched each ship as he passed, just a gentle tap of his claw or wing against the hull. But wherever he touched, systems shut down. Not destroyed or damaged, just turned off. Weapons went offline. Engines died. Life support stayed active, but the ships couldn't move or fight. In less than 3 minutes, 50 of the most powerful warships in the galaxy were floating dead in space. Every crew member was unharmed but completely helpless. Varthax returned to his mountain perch without even breathing hard. 3 weeks passed in a blur of travel and preparation. Now Tameen stood in his grandmother's house in Busan on Earth. The small traditional home sat on a hill overlooking the ocean, exactly as he remembered from childhood visits. Nothing had changed. The same wooden floors, the same paper screens, the same smell of old books and incense. Her notebooks were spread across the low table, along with star charts he had collected and archaeological reports from a dozen different worlds. Found something, Hannah called from the next room. She emerged carrying an old wooden box, its surface carved with symbols that matched the ones they had seen on Draker Prime. It was hidden under the floorboards, exactly where your grandmother's notes said it would be. Tameen opened the box with trembling hands. Inside were lists of names written in fading ink on yellowed paper. Dozens of them. Family names from across Earth and the human colonies scattered among the stars. Each name had a location next to it and a small note about what knowledge they carried. Keepers, Tameen whispered, running his finger down the list. My grandmother wasn't alone. There was a whole network of them. Families who preserved pieces of the dragon lore across generations, passing it down from parent to child, waiting for the day it would be needed. His communicator chimed. Miho's face appeared on the small screen. We've got our first volunteer. His name is Daehoon Kwan, a cargo pilot from Mars Colony. He says his grandfather told him stories about the sleepers beneath stone since he was a child. He's willing to try waking a dragon. Send him to the coordinates Varthax provided, Tameen replied, pulling up the list of sleeping guardian locations. Site 17, an ice moon in the Helix sector. And Miho, tell him to trust his instincts. The dragons recognize us somehow. They know their whispers. Over the next month, volunteers arrived from across human space. Each one carried their own fragments of the old stories. There was Yoonji Shin, a botanist from New Seoul who had grown up listening to her mother sing ancient songs about sky serpents. Juno Nam was a freight captain whose family had passed down specific phrases in Old Korean that must never be forgotten. Yuna Park was a young soldier who claimed her dreams had always been filled with flying dragons that felt more like memories than imagination. They spread across the galaxy in small teams, following Varthax's coordinates to forgotten worlds and hidden places. Each location held a sleeping guardian, and each awakening was different and unique. Daehoon found his dragon, a guardian named Skyrith, coiled deep within a massive glacier on the ice moon. When he spoke the words his grandfather had taught him, the ice shattered like glass and Skyrith emerged with scales that looked like frozen starlight. The dragon's first breath froze the air itself into crystalline patterns. Yunji awakened Thornax in the heart of a dying forest world. The dragon's scales were made of living wood and moss. Where Thornax flew, dead plants suddenly bloomed again, following in the guardian's wake like spring chasing winter. But not every attempt succeeded. They lost the first 2 whispers on a world where council agents arrived first. The agents were part of High Counselor Thex's faction, the group that still feared the dragons more than the Void Swarm. They bombarded the dragon site from orbit, trying to secure the area before humans could reach it. The explosions damaged the ancient stasis field that had kept the guardians sleeping for millions of years. When the human whispers finally arrived and tried to wake the dragon, something went horribly wrong. The damaged stasis field couldn't release properly. Energy backlashed through the 2 humans who had spoken the awakening words. They died instantly and the dragon never woke up. The guardian remained trapped in broken sleep, neither alive nor dead. The council is working against us, Hannah reported grimly after the incident. Her face was hard with anger. There's a faction led by High Counselor Thex. They believe the dragons are a bigger threat than the Void Swarm. They're trying to destroy the guardian sites before we can reach them. Then they're fools, said a new voice. Admiral Jisoo Han entered the briefing room aboard their command ship. She was a legend in Earth's small navy, known for winning battles against impossible odds. Her presence meant the human military was finally taking this seriously and committing real resources. "I'm here to provide escort," she said without wasting words on pleasantries. "The Council may be divided, but Earth is united. Every human fleet is mobilizing. If the dragons need whispers, then we'll make sure those whispers reach the Guardian sites alive." Her words proved prophetic within days. At the 23rd Awakening, Council ships tried to intercept the human team. Admiral Jisoo's fleet met them in battle, shields flashing as energy weapons lit up the void. While the ships fought above, Yuna made it to the surface and awakened a dragon named Vexthor. The Guardian's roar alone was enough to shatter the attacking ship's shields. The Council forces retreated quickly, but the message was clear: there would be more resistance. Meanwhile, the Void Swarm continued to advance. 5 more colonies went silent, their population simply vanishing. Then 10 more. Then 20. Varthax fought at the rim with the few dragons already awakened, trying to slow the enemy's advance. But even the ancient guardians couldn't be everywhere at once. The swarm was learning and adapting with terrifying speed, finding new ways to slip past defenses. Tameen received a mental message from Varthax during the 30th Awakening. The dragon's voice in his mind sounded strained and tired for the first time since waking. "They're testing us, learning our capabilities and studying our tactics. The main swarm force hasn't committed yet. When it does, we'll need every single guardian awake. Hurry, whisper. The galaxy has weeks left, not months." The teams pushed harder, working day and night. They jumped from world to world, barely stopping to rest. By week 7 they had awakened 37 dragons. Each guardian joined the defensive line at the rim, creating a barrier of ancient power against the encroaching darkness that threatened to consume everything. But then came the betrayal that changed everything. A council strike force led by Thex's agents attacked one of the largest dragon sites, an ancient temple complex where 5 guardians slept together and shared stasis. The agents deployed weapons designed to crack planets, determined to destroy the site before any human could reach it. The human team there, led by Daehoon and Yunji, had no choice. They attempted something Varthax had warned was incredibly dangerous: a simultaneous awakening of multiple dragons at once. All 5 humans spoke the words together, calling to 5 dragons at the same moment. The planet's core destabilized from the surge of energy. Power erupted in cascading waves that tore through rock and atmosphere. 3 dragons awakened successfully: Corvith, Silrith, and Tempri. They emerged in glory and rage. But 2 guardians didn't make it. Their stasis fields collapsed catastrophically. The unleashed energy killed 2 human whispers instantly, burning them to ash. Daehoon survived but was badly wounded, his body scarred by energies not meant for mortal flesh. The battle at Theres Prime changed everything. The Galactic Council finally understood. They could no longer deny the truth staring them in the face. The Void Swarm was real, and the dragons were necessary for survival. They officially recognized the Human-Dragon Alliance and gave it their full support. High Counselor Thex was removed from his position in disgrace. His faction was dissolved, its members stripped of authority. Emergency protocols were enacted across every member species, mobilizing resources like never before in galactic history. But victory had come at a terrible price. Earth's fleet was shattered, reduced to just a quarter of its original strength. Dozens of ships floated as wreckage in space, their crews dead or scattered. 15 human whispers had died, some during the awakening process when their bodies couldn't handle the strain, others in battles against the Void Swarm or Council forces. And 2 dragons, ancient beings who had existed for millions of years, were gone forever. Their loss left a hole in the universe that could never be filled. Tameen stood aboard the Taiguk, the new flagship of the Combined Defense Force. He stared at casualty reports displayed on a screen, reading name after name. Each one was a person who had answered his call, someone who believed humanity had a role to play in this ancient war. The weight of their deaths pressed down on him like a physical burden. "Stop torturing yourself," Hannah said, entering the observation deck. She had new scars now, souvenirs from a battle where her ship had been boarded by void-touched creatures. They knew the risks when they volunteered. "Did they?" Tameen asked quietly, not looking away from the names. "I promised them they would wake guardians and become heroes. I didn't promise they would die doing it." "You promised them meaning?" Hannah stood beside him, her reflection ghostly in the viewport. "Every single one of them chose to be here. That's what humans do. We choose to fight impossible odds because sitting and waiting to die isn't in our nature." A mental voice suddenly resonated through the ship, felt by every human aboard like a weight in their minds. It was Varthax, but he sounded different. Older. More tired than Tameen had ever heard him. Whispers, I need you to attend me. The Void Swarm is preparing its final assault. We must discuss what comes next. The meeting took place in a chamber that existed partially outside normal space. A gift from the dragons that allowed them to gather without needing a physical location large enough to hold 53 massive guardians. Tameen found himself standing in what appeared to be a vast starfield, with dragons circling overhead like living constellations. Other humans were there too, the surviving Whispers, military commanders like Admiral Jisu, and Ambassador Kyung representing Earth's government. Varthax descended from above, and for the first time, Tameen truly saw the exhaustion in the ancient guardian's eyes. Fighting at the rim for weeks had taken its toll even on a dragon. The Void Swarm's main force is assembling, Varthax began without wasting words. What you have fought so far are merely scouts, perhaps 1% of their true strength. When they commit their full power, it will be a tide that drowns stars and consumes worlds whole. Can we stop them? Admiral Jisu asked bluntly. She never wasted time with gentle questions. Yes. But not with conventional warfare. Varthax's gaze swept across all the assembled humans. There is a weapon, a final option that the first wardens created in our original war against the swarm. It requires all 53 guardians working together, and it requires all of you. Us? Yunji asked, confusion clear in her voice. What can we possibly do that dragons cannot? You can anchor us. Varthax's mental voice grew heavy with the weight of what he was about to reveal. Dragons can manipulate vast energies that reshape reality itself, but we cannot focus them with enough precision. We need human consciousness, your pattern recognition abilities, your adaptability, your capacity to make intuitive leaps that our ancient minds cannot. Bonded together, dragons and Whispers can create a dimensional seal that will trap the Void Swarm outside our reality permanently. Bonded how? Tameen asked, though something deep in his gut already knew the answer and feared it. A complete psychic merger. Your consciousness and ours becoming one entity. It allows us to channel unimaginable power through you, using your minds to target and shape energies we can perceive but not fully control. Silence fell across the strange meeting space like a heavy blanket. Finally Yuna spoke up. She had always been direct, a soldier who appreciated honesty. What's the catch? There's always a catch with this kind of power. The strain of channeling that much power through a human mind is immense, Varthax said quietly. Some of you will survive the process. Many will not. And those who do survive will never be entirely separate from their dragon again. You will carry a piece of us forever, your consciousness fundamentally and permanently changed. So it's a suicide mission, Juno said flatly, his face showing no emotion. It's a sacrifice, Varthax corrected gently. One that we ask, not demand. Without the seal, the Void Swarm will consume this galaxy within months, then move to the next galaxy and the next. With it, they will be trapped forever in their own dimension, unable to reach any reality where life exists. Ambassador Kyung stepped forward, her diplomatic mask finally cracking to show anger beneath. You're asking humanity to sacrifice its Whispers, people who have already given so much, for a galaxy that half feared and opposed us until a few weeks ago. I am asking those who remember the old compact to honor it one last time, Varthax replied. Your ancestors stood with us once. They gave their lives so that future generations could live in peace and safety. We hope their descendants have the same courage. Tameen looked around at the other Whispers. He saw Yunji with tears streaming down her face but determination in her eyes. He saw Juno's grim acceptance of what had to be done. He saw Yuna's hand resting on her sidearm, always ready to be a soldier. He saw Daehoon, still recovering from his wounds, standing straight despite the pain that must be coursing through his body. How long do we have? Tameen asked. 3 days. The swarm is gathering at the edge of the galaxy. When they move, they will advance on a front thousands of light years wide. Every inhabited world, every station, every ship will be in their path. We must strike first before they fully enter our space. Admiral Jisu spoke up, her voice firm. What do you need from the fleet? A distraction. Keep the swarm's attention divided while we prepare the seal. It will not be easy, you will be facing the full force of their vanguard, billions of void-touched creatures. Wouldn't be a proper last stand without impossible odds, Jisu replied with dark humor. Earth's fleet will hold the line for as long as we can. Tameen woke 3 weeks later in a medical facility on Earth. The first thing he noticed was strange. He wasn't alone in his own head anymore. Varthax was there, not controlling his thoughts or invading his privacy but simply present. Like a warm weight in the back of his consciousness, ancient and patient and gently amused by something. "Welcome back," the dragon murmured in his mind. "We were beginning to worry you might sleep forever." Taming croaked. His throat felt raw and painful, like he had been screaming for days. "The other survivors," said a familiar voice from beside his bed. Hannah sat in a chair, looking exhausted but deeply relieved. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. 23 whispers made it through the bonding alive. 15 didn't survive the process. The rest? Well, they're not exactly human anymore, but they're alive and that's what matters. Taming tried to sit up and discovered his body responded strangely. He felt stronger than before, his movements carrying an odd grace he had never possessed. "What happened to me?" "The bonding changed you at a fundamental level," Jaiwan explained, entering the room with medical scans displayed on her datapad. "All the survivors were physically altered. You have enhanced healing now, extended lifespan. The doctors estimate you might live for centuries. Your senses are heightened, your reflexes faster. You're carrying dragon essence in your cells now. The medical teams are calling you hybrid whispers." "A fair description," Varthax said, and Taming realized with shock that the dragon was speaking both in his mind and somehow aloud through his own vocal cords. It was disorienting but not unpleasant. "You are still human at your core but also something more now. As are all who survived the bonding ritual." "The void swarm?" Taming asked, dreading the answer but needing to know. "Sealed," Hannah said, and she smiled for the first time since entering the room. "The dimensional breach is closed completely. The dragons estimate the seal will hold for at least 10 million years. By then, maybe the galaxy will have developed better defenses against such threats. Or maybe they will need to wake us up again," Jaiwan added, adjusting the medical monitors. "The dragons have agreed to return to stasis, to preserve their strength in case the seal eventually weakens. But this time they won't hide their existence. Every major world now has a dragon temple, a guardian watching over them in sleep." "And the whispers who died?" Taming asked quietly, thinking of the 15 who hadn't survived the terrible strain of channeling cosmic energies through mortal bodies. "Heroes," said a new voice. Ambassador Kyung entered the medical room, followed by several alien dignitaries in formal robes. "The Galactic Council has declared them defenders of the galaxy. Every species has erected monuments in their honor. Their names will be taught to children in schools for generations to come." High Counselor Yentra followed her in, a Velcrin who had replaced Thex after his removal. Where Thex had been cold and calculating, Yentra seemed genuinely humble. "We were wrong about humanity. About what your species represents in this galaxy. We owe you a debt that can never be fully repaid." "They need no debt," Varthax rumbled through Taming's voice, creating an odd double tone. "They did what they were always meant to do, stand with us against the darkness. That is payment enough for any guardian or whisper." Over the following months, Taming learned to live with his new reality. He could feel Varthax's presence always, a constant companion in his thoughts. He could tap into draconic powers when needed, nothing like what the full dragons could do but enough to mark him as different from normal humans. He could manipulate small amounts of energy, perceive things beyond normal human senses, and his body healed from injuries in hours rather than weeks. The other surviving whispers experienced similar changes. Together they formed a new organization called the Watchers. Their purpose was to maintain the dragon temples, ensure the old knowledge was never lost again, and stand ready if the galaxy ever needed its guardians awakened once more. Yunji discovered she could make plants grow with just a touch, a gift from her bond with Thornax. Yuna found she could phase through solid objects for brief moments, an echo of Vexthor's abilities. Daehun's wounds healed completely, and he could now survive in the vacuum of space for short periods, sustained by Skyratha's essence within him. Earth itself changed. No longer seen as a backwater world of primitive newcomers, it became a place of pilgrimage. Aliens came from across the galaxy to visit the temples, to learn about the whispers and their sacrifice, to understand the ancient compact between dragons and humans. The house in Busan where Taming's grandmother had lived became a museum. Her notebooks were carefully preserved behind glass, those fading pages of myths and legends that had turned out to be instruction manuals for saving the galaxy. Thousands visited every year to see where it all began. Admiral Jisoo became the first human to hold a permanent seat on the Galactic Council's military command. Her tactics during the final battle were studied across the galaxy. She had proven that humans, despite lacking advanced technology or ancient powers, possessed something equally valuable, the stubborn refusal to accept defeat. 1 year after the sealing, a ceremony was held on Draker Prime where it all began. Representatives from every species gathered at the mountain temple where Varthax still slept. The dragon had returned to stasis, but not before ensuring the temple was restored and maintained. Tameen stood before the sleeping guardian, placing his hand on the now familiar platform inscribed with ancient symbols. In his mind, he could still feel Varthax's presence, distant but constant, like a star whose light takes years to reach your eyes. "Thank you," he whispered, "for trusting us, for remembering us when you could have forgotten." A mental warmth touched his thoughts, Varthax responding even in sleep. "Thank you, little one, for remembering us when all others forgot. That is the true power of humanity. You never forget your stories, your myths, your legends. You carry them across stars and centuries, keeping them alive until the moment they are needed." Ambassador Kyung stood beside him on the platform. "What will you do now? The galaxy is at peace. The threat is contained. You could retire, live quietly with the gifts the bonding gave you." Tameen looked up at the massive sleeping dragon, then out at the assembled representatives from 1,000 worlds. "No. The Watchers will continue their work. We'll train new generations, teach them the old stories, ensure that if the seal ever weakens, there will be whispers ready to wake the Guardians again." "And in the meantime?" Kyung asked. "In the meantime, we remind the galaxy that monsters under the bed aren't always there to scare you," Tameen said, echoing words his grandmother had told him as a child. "Sometimes they're there to protect you. We just had to remember how to wake them." He turned to address the assembled crowd, his voice carrying across the mountain plateau. "Humanity will continue to explore, to grow, to spread across the stars. But we will never forget our role. We are the keepers of the old words. We are the whispers who call to sleeping guardians. And when darkness threatens the light, we will stand ready." The end.